Alright, here we are, the night walk. This is a night hiker's diary. I still haven't recorded one of these that I would want to upload, so I'm just giving it another shot. It's already like my hobby. It's a time of prayer, a time of, it's been a time of escapism many times in my life. It's been a place of solace, a haven, a refuge. This place I'm walking right now is called Purgatory Park, funny enough. And well, I would say that it's served me very well for the past 10 years to be able to just not play video games, right? Like when I was 13, and I'm a 2000 baby, so there's really no need for me to tell you my age or what year it was, right? When I was 13, I quit video games after seeing India, specifically and especially the aesthetics of India. And I will always be grateful for that, but I will also be just as, if not more, grateful that my hobby became walking, right? Because it didn't make a lot of sense at first. It was just like, I like to go for walks. It's a time to listen to music, maybe pick up a drink from the gas station. And that was good unplug, unwind kind of time for my mind. And I loved it. And I still love it. But it turned into many different things, alongside quitting video games. One of my hobbies became making music. Right, I never took music theory or any of that stuff. None of that stuff. I just got right into it. Just started producing stuff and playing whatever sounded good. And the walk and the music started to go hand in hand. I would listen to the music I made on the walks, and I would make music that corresponded to the journey of the walks. And so it became like kind of an artistic, spiritual feedback loop. Right? And more, I couldn't really see it, especially during my phase of being kind of an atheist of various sorts, an agnostic of various sorts. I don't think you can indulge in an ascetical kind of practice like this, right? And not be mystical. So that became a predicament. Right, and from agnostic mysticism came just, I never did substances throughout high school or middle school, not until I was 18, a legal adult, because I had always been interested in things like psychedelics. And then after 18, that's when I started to actually do them. I dropped out of college, just worked, figured college isn't for me, ended up being for me, because, I've always been interested in philosophy as well. Philosophy was kind of a good grounded vehicle for mysticism in my eyes, and so it ultimately isn't. That's kind of what I continue to learn, but it's still useful, right? I think the Neoplatonic thinkers proved that. Wasn't always able to know that. I mean, that's why I'm going to college now. Studied philosophy, got into theology, the spaces in between and beyond. But I've always kept my intellectual life grounded outside of the classroom. I think that's so, for some people at least, it's really important. Don't limit your intellectual life to the classroom. I think for some people it's necessary. Depends on what you're doing, right? And if you're the kind of loser I am, right, just poking a bit of fun at me, don't think my self-deprecation is completely sincere, even if there is some truth in it, right? Just kind of being that loser that's in his mom's basement thinking, both my parents, trying to find the answers, right? And I guess I found it. Now it's just a matter of turning it into my job to some extent. I don't know if I would become a priest. I found Eastern Orthodox Christianity after a while, especially dwelled on Taoism, the Upanishadic aspects of Hinduism and that whole school of thought. Some things I liked about Buddhism, some things I didn't necessarily enjoy that much. I feel like that goes with anything, you know, even with my tradition I follow now, Eastern Orthodox Christianity. There's things I sometimes have to just swallow my pride and go through with. You know, that is kind of the way with any school of thought you follow, right? You kind of just got to go with it because it knows better than you. And I learned that pretty well from just my free roaming, agnostic, mystical, psychedelic kind of life, right? You know, I've lived in Singapore for 2 years. Not that I knew any other language. The main language there is English, so I didn't really have to, but I was surrounded by cultures. You know, at that time I was suspected of having autism, so I went to a little tutoring school, right? And it's just been an isolating existence for me. And I learned to cope with it. And it's interesting to see people go through that now after like 2020 and all this shit, right? You know, because in a way I've already gone through that. I got the vaccine for that kind of occurrence. I was even, you know, tutored on laptops, so nothing about 2020 was new to me. It was just time to go back to Singapore, if anything, you know, not literally, but spiritually. That time in my life reflected so deeply what was going on then. And it was a time of like profound solitude, as well as being surrounded by the various religions of the world. So I got YouTube Premium. I would listen to the various audiobooks and wisdoms of the religions I've known throughout the years, you know, less the Abrahamic faiths and more the various philosophies. And, you know, I got into, again, psychedelics before. I spent 2020 sober, more or less sober, you know. Wouldn't do psychedelics or weed or anything like that. And tried to really get in touch with God and with the source, with the Tathagata, whatever it was, whatever the ultimate truth is. Right? Because I've been in, you know, they call it psychosis, but like, I feel like it is the spiritual awakening. And if you're going to actually have the spiritual awakening, it's not going to be subtle. Right? Because when I use the word spiritual, I'm not talking about, you know, any fixed school of thought. I would almost say that my quote-unquote religion is and was the apophatic vehicle, knowing that you don't know ultimate reality. But that ultimate reality knows you. It knows you better than you know yourself. Right? Because the ego is always there to tell you a convincing story about yourself, feed you the memories and the impressions and the imprints of your life. And a lot of the times it's not accurate to approach it with all or nothing thinking. No, it's not all lies. No, it's not all truth. It's just a story, right? And I don't mean to look down on stories, you know. Like, stories are profound. Stories are a really important part of life. They convey to us the emotions and the movements and the meanings, not just one meaning, but meanings of life. In a way, there is an underlying meaning, right? Depending on if you can philosophically register it, right? And that's where God comes in. And for me, you know, I didn't really understand Christianity or the Abrahamic religions, so my kind of introductory to that was Taoism and the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi, right? The successor of Lao Tzu, who allegedly wrote the Tao Te Ching. He's a pretty shadowy figure, so we don't really know. But I go with it. Yeah, I say that Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, and that Zhuangzi wrote the Zhuangzi, self-titled. Like a punk rock album. Anyway, and he was kind of punk. He was I think in the Lionel Giles translation, he was described as a mystical anarchist. His critics say that he was constantly sinking in the quicksands of metaphysics. And I can kind of relate, just being kind of an impractical, lifelong student. With this being my hobby, I mean, that's the thing. The Tao Te Ching is the most relatable thing in this world I've come across. Right? And people have made fun of me like that, like I'm the cliche fucking psychedelic Taoist hippie, right? Quote unquote Taoist hippie. Right? And I embrace it because that's what I fucking am. I'm not gonna lie. And if it's stupid, if it's a cliche, fuck it all. That's the jersey I wear. That's the team that I fight for. You know, you gotta be humble. You know, like, that was another meditation I started to come into with these walks, right? Like, honesty. This is a time You can cultivate real and sincere honesty with yourself, right? I would have thoughts on these walks like, I'm not that great. I'm not that good. My ego needs to be off me and not feed me these stories of, oh yeah, those people that wronged me did so because they're bad people and blah, blah, blah. It's just a bunch of bullshit. It's just a bunch of BS. It's my belief system, right? And I think that the ultimate truth is the abrogation of your particulared, as in like, your little reality. Your little reality is going to have to encounter the big real reality. It's just a matter of course, right? And again, relating it back to the Taoists, Chuang Tzu had a perfect illustration of this, right? I'm going to butcher this story a little bit, but I'll do my best to compensate where I will not be able to remember certain details, but the well overfloods, the rains trickle down, and all of the forest treasures are gathered unto the river. And the river laughed for joy that all the treasures were gathered unto himself. He felt like the top of the world. The river traveled a time before reaching the great ocean. And upon reaching the great ocean, the countenance of the river fell, and he was distraught. Seeing the vast, seemingly infinite expanse of the ocean, the river was humbled. And the spirit of the river said to the spirit of the ocean, I at one point thought, or as a vulgar proverb says, he who has seen part of the truth thinks himself to know the whole, and such a fool was I. And then the spirit of the ocean says to the spirit of the river, basically like, dude, that's no problem, it happens. But now that you have encountered this epiphany, I can speak to you of great principles now that you see your own insignificance. For for myself and all the other oceans on the planet, are they not as pools, marshes to the greater cosmos? And the small villages that surround me at bays and beaches, are they not like a tear seed in a granary? And he starts to go into this, it's very similar, if you read the Bible, to Job, where this nagging questioning about the nature of reality upon one finding chaos, discord, disconsolation in the cosmos, right? This greater force swoops down in condescension, and now that's where that word kind of pisses some people off. Condescension in a very appropriate term. It's not like, oh, I'm better than you. No, it's literally the ocean talking to the river, man. Those are two different things. In Job, it's God, the creator of all things, seen and unseen, talking to a man. Both are doing the best with what they got, and that kind of condescension, well, I think you see it, right? Let that aura of nastiness be off that word, right? That divine condescension to help illuminate us is important. In an Eastern Orthodox book, Unseen Warfare, it technically has 3 authors: Lorenzo Scapoli, who I think was a Catholic priest or some kind of Catholic dude, and then 2 Orthodox guys helped edit and revise it. St. Theophan the Recluse, who has a lot of wise quotes in books, and then St. Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain. I don't remember if his title was the Harrogate or whatever. I'm still a newbie and a baby in the faith, so be patient with me. But at some point, again, I'm going to have to paraphrase. How can grace, which comes to help and enlighten us, ever enter that man who thinks of himself that he is something great, that he needs no outside help, that he alone knows everything? May God preserve us from this disease and passion of Lucifer, says St. Theophan. God severely reprimands people who are fraught with this disease of self-esteem. Rather, God looks for a sincere consciousness of our nothingness. A sincere consciousness of our nothingness. and are wholly belonging to him, and that any good that may come from us comes from him alone, since he is the source of all goodness. Therefore, it is merely proper understanding that any good that may come from us, whether it be a good thought or a good action or a good deed or whatever, comes from God alone. Right? This is an understanding that, as I was saying earlier, the spiritual awakening will show people, and it can drive certain prideful types into absolute chaos. Right? That was me. I was very prideful, very stubborn, very fixed on being the guy with the answers. And then I realized I totally wasn't. Not at all. Not even close. Right? But that led to true wisdom, you know? Kind of knowing my place. Because I was open to the truth, I had to submit to what I knew to be true after that, which doesn't mean I know the whole of the truth. It just means I know you're getting part of the truth. I'm not going to get caught up or run away with that. I acknowledge that it's only part of the truth. Right? And, and if psychedelics can show you that, if philosophy can show you that, if theology can show you that, life is certainly going to show you that. I think that's why people reach for those kinds of things in the first place. Reach for any kind of answer. Right? Because the scope of where we're living and how we're living and what we're doing can be so limited, especially with the Pandora's box of the internet. We know there's a whole world out there, vast libraries of knowledge and wisdom and what have you, and it's profound stuff. But we can't ever think of ourselves as, it's not a matter of being worthy or not, it's just that our capacity in our lifetime, it's a fleeting thing, however infinite little moments can be. Little years, little months, little weeks, little days. There's only so much we can do with this life. There's arguably infinite things to know. Right? Not just little units of information or memes or books to read, but experiences to have, empirical knowledge. Right? Hey, how does a gas station hot dog and a Red Bull taste? How about the other Red Bull, the blueberry one or the cranberry one with that hot dog, or a different hot dog, or you get what I'm saying. It's kind of ridiculous, but like combinations of different ideas or senses, and then in the pursuit of God and the pursuit of, I heard it first, the pursuit of Tao, you're always trying, I'll phrase it this way first. In the pursuit of knowledge, what I just kind of illustrated there with the hot dogs and the books and the what have yous, every day something is to be earned. Every day a new experience is to be gained. When you acknowledge the infinite expanse, the almost infinite blackness, right? Not as in darkness, not as in like Satan and hell and all that, no. More in the sense that Pseudo-Dionysius talked about. All the apophatic big dogs talked about. That's what I call them. Lao Tzu, Zhuang Tzu, Pseudo-Dionysius, Gregory Palamas, Meister Eckhart, to a lesser extent, Plato, St. Thomas Aquinas, etc., etc. They were all apophatic, as in they understood that we don't understand God. We know what's revealed to us. We know what we can infer from nature, natural theology, regular theology, philosophy, metaphilosophy, blah, 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 all this shit, right? Not to call it shit, but in the grand scheme of things, it kind of is, right? We're not ever going to have the answers in terms of what is truly the substantial underlying reality of what things are, which is what a lot of those things try to figure out. And it's like, you can't figure it out, bro. You're the inversion of God's unlimitedness. Right? So the best thing you can do is construct an apophatic vehicle, right? And I missed out on one of the best apophatic big dogs, right? And, not a lot of Christians really like this guy because he's so often idolatized, but Shakyamuni Buddha, the original OG Siddhartha Gautama, the awakened one is the translation of the Buddha, right? He was very apophatic. He is the apophatic big dog, arguably, right? Because he was surrounded by the Hindu traditions of his time, And he didn't know about all that. He said himself, I'm not a god. I don't know about God. I don't know about a lot of things, but there seems to be this thing called reincarnation, right? That's one of the things he pulled from his religion. He figured, you know, like there's the Puranic heavens, there's all these lifetimes, but what I know about my body right here, right now, is that there's suffering, right? He lived his life as a lavish prince, living in palaces, getting all the sex and all the drugs and all the this and all the that, all the material possessions, and he realized it was all empty, useless. And his ultimate career, especially useless, right? And so with his rejection of materialism and hedonism came his pursuit of asceticism. And with his pursuit of asceticism, he was able to create, you know, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. He was able to kind of come up with this formula that, you know, suffering is caused by desire. Right? And again, I don't know if I completely agree with Buddha on all of his implications there, Shakyamuni Buddha, but it's incredibly insightful stuff. Right? And what was elaborated on it, especially by the Theravada Buddhists, who stuck the most, how would you say? They say the most faithful to the initial teachings of the Buddha. They talked about, like, even what we kind of have in the West with this Cartesianism, you know, the cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, that jazz, right? Which can be kind of dangerous when it's not properly understood. But they understood an abrogation of the self that was the five aggregates, right? You don't have a self. You have perception, sensation, memories, thoughts, etc., etc. I forget all the five aggregates, but right, it's a way of not destroying, but deconstructing the self, that which appears to be the self. And, you know, like, again, a lot of Buddhic wisdom is stuff that I feel it's like it's illuminating the subconscious of almost every human being, right? This is the leverage of things like the Jungian archetypes. It's stuff that's already in the collective unconscious. Right then, someone's calling me who's really into Jung right now. Sorry, it's about me and this video and God right now. It's always funky when I get into this spot. Anyway, I won't make this too long, but I do want to make it complete. Right, and I had a sense of that life is just, you know, my introductory to that was the term solipsism. Right, and solipsism is the idea that everything that's happening around you, everything you call quote-unquote reality, is just really an occurrence in your head. Right, and there's at least a dimension to truth of that, you know, kind of a biological one, that everything that gets into your head, everything that you perceive is processed and rendered by your neurological reality tunnel. Not just your brain, not just your thoughts, but your whole nervous system is programmed in such a way that it takes the incoming signals and organizes them into a functioning reality tunnel. Who helped me understand that? The LSD philosophers of the 60s and 70s and 50s. Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson, especially Wilson. Right, and again, they were saying something that made so much sense to me when they started to say that, especially after, I would have understood it before I'd taken LSD and all these things, but I especially understood it afterwards, and it was especially relatable. And that was a time when I was trying to, like, okay, let's put the LSD down, let's put these things down. I had already learned a lot. I had this really wacky spiritual awakening that was traumatizing for me and everyone around me, so now I just need to understand it in a very straightforward manner, and he really helped him understand that dimension to it. He was another agnostic mystic, Robert Anton Wilson, and I don't know as much about Leary, but I think the best insight I could get was from Wilson. I have to pee. I'm probably going to do that in the trees, so I'm debating. I'll probably pause this video and just pick it up from there. All right, that was very good. Anyway, so yeah, Wilson kind of helped me compartmentalize a lot of the things I learned from Buddhism, from psychedelics, and from some of the more Not that I'm very good at this. I actually just took a class on it, and I was very bad at understanding a lot of these guys. Maybe it's because I had a time crunch and it was in a academic setting, but the analytical philosophers of the 20th century, right? Like Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein and all those fellas. Not that I don't understand like some of the good stuff. Again, Wilson put it in a way that makes sense to someone like me, right? Like with language, there's the map territory distinction. The Taoists definitely precapitulated me, to use another one of Wilson and Leary's words. It precapitulated me for understanding what they would mean by this, right? The map and the territory, right? Language is a map. Right? This is at least the philosophy I took from them, and kind of combined with my Taoist reality tunnel. Right? Language is a map. And I even put it in a poetic kind of way. I'll reiterate this piece of my book I'm going to release at some point, maybe in a year. Maybe I keep working on it and I keep having new ideas to put into it, so I'm not rushing it, but I'll share this little bit. Language is a place, as some have figured out, and through patience and doubt and clarity of vision, one can taste the extent of language's ends being non-existent. It serves as a chair does, and like a chair is animal made, a verbalized and dramatized, symphonized serenade of charades. Oh, and what profundities words do outline, and what marvels they create from thought. If only there were something it could create that didn't fit the Mandelbrot. Then it would perhaps be remarkable and as important as we think it is, and yet so often it lies, and is a plastic psychosis that eats your mind alive. Right, and it's a poetic way of putting it. I'll elaborate further, because poetry isn't everyone's, means of communication. Once you have this kind of understanding of language, that it does not constitute reality, it's just a map of reality, right? You'll start to notice that you have a language-bearing mind that defines reality on its own terms, as well as your own ego. I am this, I am that. There's that very dangerous word I, and that other very dangerous word am, right? Which again, when you go back to the Jewish mysticism and the Abrahamic mysticism, it makes a lot of sense for God to say that. For us human beings, it can get dangerous, because we are surrounded by particular things. As Lao Tzu says, when you see the manifestations, when you're caught in desire, you see the manifestations, the particular things. And being caught in those desires, okay, now just elaborating on Lao Tzu, you start to define yourself through those things. You start to define yourself through the particular things, instead of returning to your true identity in the mystery. Caught in desire, one sees the manifestations. Without desire, one sees the mystery. Yet mystery and manifestation arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding, the gateway to all mystery. Depends on the translation. I've read a few. Right, and it's even funny that mystery and understanding can reach this certain kind of thing. Again, it goes back to consciousness and understanding as an apophatic vehicle, right? And in a sense, that's what the Buddhists mean when they talk about, Vajrayana, Mahayana. These have meanings. Mahayana means greater vehicle. I forget what lesser vehicle is. I think it starts with an H. Vajrayana means accelerated vehicle or lightning bolt vehicle. An accelerated vehicle, a quick vehicle. It gets you straight to nirvana, just straight there, right into the veins. Intravenous nirvana, if you like. Tell the druggies out there. Those are the schools of thought I like in Buddhism a bit more. They have the bodhisattvas, and those are people who are willing to reincarnate however long, as everyone can enter nirvana at some point. We'll just keep coming back, helping people out. That's a refined and loving spiritual path I greatly admire. The same with Zen. Zen is a conjunction of Buddhism and Zen, of Taoism. And it started in China, and before it was called Zen in Japan, it was called Chan in China. And I particularly like Zen Chan Buddhism because I think Buddhism can use the wisdom of Taoism. But going back to that idea of human beings defining themselves through particular things, I mean, that is a place where you get caught. We are stuck and fucked with that when it comes to the technology. Technology is always trying to tell you who you are. It's always trying to provide contextual information as to where you are and who you are and why you are. Whereas I think that the silent apprehension of the Godhead is going to give you better answers to that question than a phone. That's for fucking sure. Right? Silent, mystical apprehension of the Godhead. Right? I think all the apophatic big dogs would agree. When you lose touch with that, even though it seems like just this frivolous intellectual hoot nanny, it's really actually quite important. And when our culture loses touch with that, right, to get kind of practical about it, we get stressed, we get anxious, we lose hope in some really profound way. I don't just mean hope is in always looking forward to things in the future, but more like an intrinsic feeling that life is worth living. Right? When you lose your sense of mystery, you turn to seeking sensations and excitement. And when you lose your sense of excitement and thrill seeking, you turn to institutionalized religion. Right? You know, not to be mean to institutionalized religion, but it lacks certain things which true religion just instills in people, you know? And again, coming back to where I'm at now as a Christian, I think it's important to take that seriously. Because I think that's what Christ came to do. He came to enforce, right? Not through force, but to enforce true religion. See, I don't want to walk through the neighborhoods. I don't want to have to, like, quiet down for people who might be sleeping. You know, it's kind of bogus. In what sense are they sleeping? No, I'm not going to be that dude. Fuck that dude. You know, we meet people where they're at. None of this spiritual superiority bullshit, right? Again, that's why I like Christ. He revealed the truth to babes, which is to say the innocent. Right, and it's in love. But then coming back to Lao Tzu, he said, it always takes a second to remember Lao Tzu. I'm going to paraphrase it. Man mistakes this body and this finite existence as his true self. He thinks to himself, I am this body and will soon die. This is a mistake. Man's true self is eternal. When man abides in the Tao, he is at one with the Tao. Being at one with the Tao is eternal. It has no end. It is not endangered by physical death. And this is what Christ comes to offer us. Because Christ, this is where people look at me sideways and say I'm insane, but this is what the night hike has done to me, and studying this stuff and meditating on it and thinking about it. Right? Hey, if I got 10 years of doing this shit and it shows for anything, here it is. Christ is the Tao itself, taking on flesh. And he is here to offer us eternal life through the truth in love, because he is love itself, love himself. He comes to bring a personhood, a personal identity to the underlying substantial reality that makes all things visible and invisible. Right? And of all the things that force could have done, it was crucified and told us to live likewise crucified lives, more or less allegorically, but still in a parallel fashion, in a similar fashion of loving self-sacrifice and redefining love. Not, ooh, me and all my pleasures and all my wonders and how I egoically feel about myself. That's a lot of shit. That's a lot of bullshit. That's your own BS, your own belief system. Get over yourself. It's about God. And it's about now really starting to incorporate my Eastern Orthodox lessons here. It's about serving Christ and others. When we live for Christ and for others, our life is made full. It's been said 1,000 times in the past by other rishis and sages and teachers. Fulfill the needs of others and you will find your own needs fulfilled in there. In the living for, they didn't know it was Christ, but living for Christ and for others. That's what Lao Tzu said about the Tao. That is more or less what Heraclitus in the fragments implicated through talking about the Logos. And that's where the connection is. I'll leave people no longer in suspense of why I'm saying that with confidence, that Christ is the Tao. Well, the Tao is kind of this, what I would call the aperture of the creator within creation, right? Very similarly to how Heraclitus described the Logos, right? The Logos is this principling, ordering, creating, manifesting force in nature that creates all things. It's the presence of God within the creation, because God is by definition the creator, not the creation, but he is able to create within creation with some kind of aperture, some kind of tool, the Tao, the Logos. And Greece and China were both coming up with this epiphany of this force in nature around the same time, 500 BC. Around that time, right around the time of the Silk Road. So it makes a lot of sense. The Silk Road between Greece and China, where they were exchanging goods. And probably not just goods, but ideas, philosophies. And even if they weren't talking about, like, implicitly or explicitly, like, the Tao, quote unquote, or the Logos, quote unquote, they were probably exchanging ideas that led them to observe this kind of stuff. Right? And so, yeah, Greece and China both kind of found this thing at the same time, I think. And it is basically the same thing. Because you go to English, Logos translates to word. And what does it say in the Gospel from Saint John the Theologian? Do the sign of the cross to honor God's servant there. Saint John the Theologian starts his Gospel off with metaphysics. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You go over to Greek. What does Word become? In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. Bring it over to China. In the beginning was the Tao, and the Tao was with God, and the Tao was God. Right? We have video games in this day and age. And again, I don't play video games, but I can think of it like this. God needs an avatar. This is his creation. This is his game. Right? He needs to create an avatar. He needs to have, right? That avatar is spiritually present, right? Right? Either through the Holy Spirit or something. Logos, through Tao. But then, I think the Holy Spirit is a bit different from just simply being the Logos. Not that the Logos is a simple thing, right? And I just have to clarify where I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. I'm just trying to highlight and reveal certain things I have connected through philosophy and theology and theosophy and mysticism and all this stuff, dude. Right? But then, como se dice, there's gonna have to be at some point an avatar of the creator within the game. Right? And so he makes it, and it's Jesus Christ. Makes a lot of sense to me. Makes a lot of sense to me. And the more you look into it, the more it starts to make sense. That's been my journey. Right? Don't get me wrong, I've been through all the other stuff, like the occult and Satan and a lot of the garbage and, other stuff that was just kind of good to find on the way there, like the Emerald Tablets and, to a lesser extent, Thelema and some of the, I don't really like the fundamentalist materialist thinkers very much, but it doesn't mean they're not insightful. It doesn't mean they don't have thoughts. It doesn't mean they weren't being as honest as they could with the things they had. It was good to research that and study that, right? Good on them for trying. Right? And I'm not trying to look down on them, because who knows? I could be wrong. I could just be some brain dead fucking hallucinating hippie full of mush in his brain, right? I don't know, dude, but I highly doubt it at this point. I've spent a lot of my life doubting myself, and a lot of illumination started to come in when I started to not only embrace, it started very subtly, the fact that there is the invisible reality. Okay, getting somewhere with that. And then, psychedelics kind of like, okay, there's a Tao, there's a logos, there's a principling, ordering thing within creation. And then, it just went over to a personal God. Then who is that personal God? I hope it's not the guy that's telling me what to do with my sex life. Ooh, no, it definitely is. Because that makes so much sense, actually. There's my own creative force in me. And being made in his image, what is he going to care about in terms of, hey, I have a creative force that can go haywire, right? That's why human beings are able to sin and rebel. I respect your autonomy. You also beget something that has an autonomy that you want to respect, but control in terms of make it a disciplined thing that comes out of you, right? Kids, sex, right? Like all this stuff. That brings me to the other topic tonight. We could spend the rest of the time on this, but I'm not going to try to. Right, sex. That's one really profound thing. And that kind of is a good place to talk about sin and God's involvement with our lives. Right, because sex is a beautiful thing. I've always felt conflicted about it, right? I'm not afraid of talking about it with you. I ain't no fucking child, bro. Right? So, let me tell you something. Right? Having these phones has not made it a very easy thing to, control those desires, because, the P word has always been present, right? As well as the M word, right? M, just making sure I enunciate that. Self-pleasure, self-abuse, if you want to call it that, right? And that will confuse your sexual orientation, not just in terms of who you like and why you like them, but the orientation of what you see it as. Right? Is it attainment of pleasure from another human being? Ooh, that's pretty dehumanizing, pretty objectifying, kind of demonizing when you take it into the scope of the implications of theology and of God and of love himself, right? But as a creative force that should be shared between people that trust and love each other, that seems to be what brings it out the most, turns it into the intimate force it's supposed to be. People can disagree with me. I've disagreed with that for so long, dude. So long. I still struggle to see it that way. If it's any consolation, right? I still struggle with that. Not empty words. It's not like, once in a while it passes through my mind that, this is pretty difficult. No, I have made mistakes in my life based on how my conflicted feelings around that. I'm serious, so fucking serious right now. But in a way that has shown me the truth of what sex is. It is the merging of souls. It is the coming together of two people to become one and to fulfill something that's not just a fulfillment of nature, not just human nature, but of the world, but also of the cosmos, and then also in the heart of God. It's profound. Right? And so it makes all the sense in the world that, Christ would be like, you better watch out. And if you even feel desires in your heart, watch out, brother bear. Go read the scriptures. Hear what he actually says, right? I'm trying to keep it light here. But I'll dignify those words by actually quoting scripture. He who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery in his heart. And see, we don't want to accept that as true. We don't want to, because we are pleasure-seeking creatures, right? And if it's any consolation, the disciples themselves were like, Master, Rabbi, if that's the case, who can be saved? And he said, that's where we get those all-consolating lines of, with man counted impossible, but with God all things are possible. So overcoming lust, overcoming these things, you hear how me right now, the way I'm talking about it, if I had to refer to sex outside of marriage right now, I would refer to it as fornication, right? Change the way you see it, change the way you talk about it. That's part of it, but then also grounding your love not in your own pleasure, but in the source of all, God. right? And that's kind of the ticket. That's the ticket out, right? It scares me. This is one thing I actually have a hard time with, where it says, and again, I'm not well versed or chaptered if you haven't picked that up yet, but that no drunkards or sodomizers or fornicators will enter the kingdom of heaven. There's a laundry list of people that won't, apparently or allegedly. I think as long as people are moving in the, at least this is the kind of okey doke of most Christians, is that as long as you're repenting and working towards running away from those, you will be saved, and doing everything else right, but it still scares me, because what if I'm still caught in that by the time I meet my end? That'd be scary. Repenting is one thing, stopping altogether is another. But repentance ideally needs to be the stopping. And if you're going to feel any grief or any pain or any this or that, it should be over the fact that you did stop and that you miss it and that you're trying to get over it. Right? Do we have habitual slips of mentality or action? Yes. Of course, we're human beings. But we should be drastically far away from things like fornication and adultery and sodomy and all these things. Right? Time to grow up. Is the part of life I'm entering, right? Because it's not like I've had a super frivolous kind of sex life, even though that's where my heart always lied, right? My heart always wanted to pursue that, because that's what our culture, it almost induces this FOMO, this fear of missing out, that if you don't have that not just that, but those wild experiences, then you're missing out on a really key part of life, and we have to not just understand, but know that that's bullshit. We have to know, with a K, know that that's bullshit. This is a cunning deception and trap of the enemy. Right? Because when you really start to pick away at that and think about it, you start to realize that okay, what lures people in, the magnetism of it, is that sex is a very powerful and emotional and, quote-unquote loving activity. You want to express your love towards somebody, why not give them some attention in that way, right? But that's the thing. That's where the trap is there, and then you're in the bear trap, and the bear trap feels good, even though it's literally fucking spikes chewing away at your leg, which fucking, that shit's broken, dude. That's not good, right? To use a metaphor, use an analogy, right? But then you're in it, and it feels good. But then what happens? That guilt sweeps over you, and you don't talk about it. You put it Heidegedanke right in the back of the head, right? You don't think about that. That's the part of you. You just throw it in the shadow. You don't want to think about that. Ooh, how you regret having sex with that person you had sex with. Well, that's there. That's there, and it might be in the shadow, it might be in your unconscious or subconscious or whatever little pocket you put in your head, but it's there. It's fucking there. And if you're going to be honest with yourself, you're going to be honest in the fact that it might as well not have happened, and yet it did. Right? Hey, I'm speaking from experience here, dude. It's not fun. It's not fucking fun. Right? You have to realize how that it turns you into an animal, right? Something less than an animal, right? Because you're breeding like an animal. You're following the sexual instinct to some infernal goal, some insular goal, some incy tiny fucking animal-minded goal. And you're doing that as a rational human being created in the likeness and image of God. Which is why in my prayer book, I say the lines, I say them sincerely. I say them because I know they're fucking true. Lord, forgive me. Oh, here's the reverb. Here's the moment that I needed to say this. Lord, forgive me, for I have acted like something less than a human being. Maybe even less than a beast. Right? That's the fucking truth. When you consider the scope of all things, right? That's the situation. When you consider the scope of all things, that's what you're doing with your God-given capacity. And you fall for it. It's a trap. Fornication is a trap. Right? And see, I've mentioned this to a few people who are not Christian and not spiritual, and they have imbibed hookup culture. right? And I don't judge them. How the fuck could I judge them, dude? I fell for it. I fell for it and I fall for it. I fell for it and I fall for it, okay? I have to just talk about the philosophy that I'm trying to understand and imbibe and follow what I know and think and believe to be true, right? We should not withhold that kind of stuff from our friends, even though it's hard to talk about, right? If they're really our friends, right? We gotta be honest. And so I tell them, you know, like, yeah, you know, that person you're fornicating with, and people laugh at me for using that word. You ever wonder why you don't really like connect with them unless you're having sex with them? Well, that's because sex is a powerful activity that's merging the souls. It's two people coming together, releasing, like, on a totally, like, just physical level, you're releasing a shit ton of dopamine and, like, oxytocin. And however you feel about each other in reality, the chemical exchange happening there is going to draw you two together, not just physically, but spiritually. Right? In the psychology, in terms of what you two think about each other, doesn't fucking matter. Doesn't fucking matter. That's going to get bypassed. And then it's going to be a painful experience to try and just rationalize, like, yeah, why did we do that? Why do we like each other? Why are we still together? Right? You got to have insight. You got to know. Right? Because if it's just the sex, then I'm sorry. You lost the game. You lost the game there. Right? And you gave into the not so very good game of becoming something less than an animal. Right? Again, we're all human. We all have those instincts. We all have those impulses, but it's about controlling them. It's self-control. Right? I think for some people, I mean, this was true in my life at some point, even just sticking to good old-fashioned self-abuse is self-control if it's preventing you from fornicating. But ideally, you want to be able to avoid relying on sexual release like it's a drug altogether. Now, like I said, I could talk about this for the rest of my walk, right? And it is actually kind of coming to a close within like 10 minutes here, so I might lean up on sexuality and just come up with a conclusion here, right? It is a spiritual force. It does shape your life. And, you know, the notions of courtship really are the best way to approach it. Because that's the thing. If you withdraw from seeing sex as something to perform, as something like a hierarchy, right? That there are some people who are good at it and some people who are bad at it. That some people will be good in the bedroom, some people will be bad in the bed. If you throw that fucking script from Satan himself and right into the fucking garbage, it will be just a mystical, powerful little gift you share between you, your partner, and God. That's just facts, dude. Right? And that's the real danger of pornography. Not just danger, but the evil of it. The evil of it is that it perverts our expectations alongside our mentality and the way we see people. I feel like that becomes pretty obvious if you're habituated to that. If you spend most of your time on your phone looking at naked women, and then when you see actual women and you instill that kind of expectation, you know, that's fucked up in a pretty obvious way, right? But then also when it comes to your own personal intimate life, if you are expecting certain things to feel certain ways or expecting certain things to go certain ways, that's also going to cause complications. That's also going to cause complications. That's also going to cause problems, tragedies, heartbreaks, right? In all sorts of ways. In all sorts of ways I definitely don't have time to talk about here, right? Which is why it's so necessary to quit, right? Like, for so many reasons. One of the things that finally got me to be like, okay, never again, was you don't know if you're watching something consensual. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And you better believe the trafficking business is giant. Absolutely giant. All right, that's a gruesome, awful fucking topic to talk about. I really don't like it. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. When it comes to that, ultimately, yeah, that is a powerful spiritual force. We need to govern it. We need to use it. We need to be the controllers of it instead of being controlled by it. Again, you don't want to become something lower than an animal. Yeah, I'm very serious about that. And I know that, getting away from the particulars, some people will, especially in this day and age, like the rise of people trying to reintroduce things like polygamy and these kinds of things. I mean, like, listen, maybe that's your culture. Just be careful, man. Be careful. I mean, again, that force in us as human beings, it is so easy to dehumanize others and ourselves. Dehumanize, objectify other people through that. Confuse your heart, confuse the hearts of others. Then you're living in confusion. And when you reduce a human being to an aesthetic, right, to an appearance, to their beauty, to their outward appearance, you better believe that is the pinnacle of objectification and dehumanization. And it's fucking disgusting. I'm not going to hide my opinion there. If you do that, you are spiritually sick. You are under the deception of Satan himself. And I'm very sorry. Like, I've been there too. And you got to resist. You got to struggle, because it is a struggle. You got to get out of that. You got to get out of that. It's a trap. It is a trap, and it leads straight to hell. Right? You got to turn around, 180, goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye seeing people as their mere physical appearance and finding sexual pleasure in that. Don't do it, man. Don't do it. That's all I have to say about that. All right? I could fucking talk about this the rest of my walk, but I'm not going to, all right? Human beings are human beings, and if you reduce them in any way, right, to talk about other things, as a transition to other topics to talk about, if you reduce people to like, oh, you're the kind of person who likes this and doesn't like that, if you're the kind of person who likes this and likes that, like people's taste, or people's interest, or people's ideas of what they think to be true, right? Like you are reducing the human being, right? We do this to human beings. We also do this to God. We do this to everything around us, right? And relating back to what I was talking about with the Taoist and language, right? Not only does language do this, but our ideas, our very thoughts, the way we think about the world and the way the world truly is are sometimes two radically different things, right? Our reality tunnel needs to be broken in sometimes. Our reality tunnel needs to undergo a transformation sometimes. We need to find a way to refine it, bring it closer to the yoke of what is true, burn, uproot, throw out, and destroy, and then clean the parts of our reality tunnel that either don't abide in truth or obscure it or obstruct it. The goal is to be without stain. And are we ever going to succeed? No, but you can constantly do your best to get away from it, right? And again, to come one full circle back to what I'm talking about, this is what the walk helped me do. Because I don't know if you noticed, I'm not buying anything right now. I'm not consuming anything right now. I'm not doing anything right now. I'm walking. Big fucking deal. Walking is better than sitting down, that's for fucking sure. In my world, yeah. Yeah, walking beats sitting down 10 times out of 10, brother bear. Walking beats sitting down. Laying down. Sometimes even sleep. Sometimes like, maybe I should go to... No, it's time to get up. It's time to go out. Right now. Right? And why do I consider it prayer? Because I mentioned that earlier. Listen, bro. Like, this is kind of a Catholic idea, but all truth is God's truth. I think everyone can kind of agree on that. Right, that's the big boy understanding. That's an adult's understanding of where God dwells. It's the truth in love and the love in truth. Right, and so doing our best to cleanse our mind, to cleanse our heart of the filth and the clutter that clouds it throughout the day, on the night hike. That helps you find the primal vision. I'm trying to remember the Tao Te Ching when I say that. Can you cleanse your mind? Can you coax your mind of its wanderings and return to simplicity? Can you clean your mind and return to primal vision of truth? You know, stuff like this. I don't remember it entirely. And it's been a while since I've read it, but I've listened to it like hundreds of times. Right, it's just that good. Tao Te Ching, definitely that good. And then, yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, I wanted this to mostly focus on the apophatic big dogs and like mysticism and unknowing. I did a good job at talking about that. I also introduced sex and sexuality, and I feel like that's also important because that's arguably one of the most magnetic and central desires human beings can fall into. Right? Everyone's different. I know, have met, and have reciprocated feelings of people who don't see it that way, don't see it as the center or very magnetic or anything like that, you know? I feel like there's some truth there that needs to be acknowledged. Right? But for a lot of us, it is a big part of life, you know? And it's important to channel it into other places. Again, that's where music came in for me. That's where prayer comes in, especially these days. The walks, the writing things down, finding other things to do, hobbies. But I would also say a big thing is connecting with others, right? This brings me to my concluding topic before, because it's over an hour now. Right, there's this quote from St. John Chrysostom that if we do not see Christ in the homeless, we do not see Christ on the altar. And I really like that, because some of the first times I started to get in touch with God was when I would interview homeless people. And just, you know, not like with a camera or anything like that, you know, just talk to them like they're just regular people. And come to find out, they're just, that's exactly it. They're just normal people. And the circumstances and situations of life just happened to them. Whether it was, yes, addiction, or they ran out of money, got to cope with the ways of the streets, or whatever, dude. It's so easy to land there. We all take for granted. Those of us who are well off, we all take for granted the things that we have. We don't know how good we have it. A lot of the times we don't know what it's like to struggle to have necessities. There's this deer. You know what, we're all a lot like this deer. This deer freezes and it scurries away because it doesn't know that I'm literally just a harmless fucking walking hippie. Right, we all turn into that deer when homeless people come around, or someone we don't understand, or someone we don't like. Right? Hey, that's respect of people in some profound kind of way. Right? Human beings are scary. We're all mysteries. That's the thing. Maybe I need to borrow a line from Cliff Connectly here. How can I pretend to know God? How can I think that I can understand God when I don't even understand people? People have to reveal who they really truly are. And I have to be open-minded enough and considerate and compassionate enough to be patient enough to actually let them do that, to facilitate that opening up. Right? And that's what we have to do with God. See, apophaticism, as much as I like the shadowiness of it and the kind of mystical, woo, it's like cool, right? That's how I think of it. But it's also the most loving approach. You know, it's and there's a yin and a yang to it, right? Because while it emphasizes God as mystery, it doesn't mean that we can't know things about God, both through like the inferences and speculations of natural theology, right? Like Aristotle, Plato, what Thomas Aquinas kind of refined, and the unmoved mover, the one contingent thing, all those 5 proofs, and all that kind of jazz, right? Those kinds of ideas of who God is metaphysically, but then also in terms of a relationship. He's a mystery. The more you get to know him, the more he gets to know you on your terms. That's the thing, on your terms. Like I said earlier, he already knows you better than you know yourself. It's about you acknowledging that and you getting to know yourself in the truth of love and in the love of truth. Right? In God. Getting to know yourself as God's creation. Right? Instead of your own loopy little solipsistic ideas of who you think you ought to be or who you think other people think that you should be. And all these fucking games. All these really, like, I think of them as just not good. Which is really simple, but that's what happens in my head. I'm thinking like, thinking I need to be who you think that I should probably be according to what you think I should be. Not good. Not good. That's what we call that situation. We call that an ut-oh situation, ladies and gentlemen. That's a ut-oh situation. That is a not good situation. No, you get to know yourself through being a child of God. Now that makes so much more sense. That's so much more simple. It's like 1,000 things that would turn into a billion mirrored labyrinths filled with smoke for days and days, leading to infinite nothingness. It's like literally hell. No, just get to know yourself as a child of God. Doesn't mean you can't have talents. Doesn't mean you can't. No, that's where your talents come from. We live in the world. A lot of Christians, especially my tradition, emphasize, abandoning the world, death to the world. Well, yeah, in terms of the passions, in terms of the being, clinging to materialistic things, yeah, of course, death to that world, death to sin. But we're here. We have this life to deal with, and if we're gonna avoid it in any way, with the coming Antichrist, it's gonna have to win the majority of the world, and even envelop the world in darkness. But to those of us who are doing our best to just survive these times, like, yeah, we're gonna have to just do our best with what we have, and Coma City say, attend the parts of the world that belong to God, and attend the parts of the world that don't have to just be sin. Right, which again, this walk is for me, right? Because it's not like I'm doing anything. I'm talking about God. You see any people? You see anything going on? Occasionally, there's some snickering other people, snickering, smoking a joint. I used to be there, doing other things. And some people see this as intensely unproductive time. Why do you do this? You're a loser. Talk all you want. Talk all you want. Talk. Talk doesn't lead to anything. Where's your heart at? Is your heart united with God? Does your heart love him? There's a lot of things I don't know about this life. In fact, I sometimes exaggerate. I don't know anything. I know some things, but compared to the scope of what I don't know, it's fucking nothing. It's not even a grain of sand. Not even a grain of sand as compared to the scope of the cosmos. The observable cosmos and the literal cosmos, which is probably some Googleplexian number we can't even begin to fathom. Yeah. And so I leave it at that, and I live there, and I dwell there, and I admire that, and I meditate on that, and I pray about that, and just allow God to be in my life. I'm a wretched sinner. It's not like I'm great. I'm not great. In a lot of respects, I suck. I'm bad. But to just empty myself, going back to those words of Saint Theophan the Recluse, devoting some time to have a sincere consciousness of my nothingness is so essential in my life. Again, that's why I consider this an ascetic practice. It has its drawbacks, it has its benefits, like anything in existence in this world, and I'm grateful for it. It is the best treasure that I have. And with that, I might leave it there. If I have anything else to say, some of the crack. Oh, good. I don't know what else I have to say. I talked about it all. I talked about it all. And I'll talk about more. You know, we'll chop it up in the next one. I think this is good enough to upload on YouTube. I think the moments where I got vulnerable weren't too intense or like something I would like regret talking about, you know. That's my problem, is I record things I kind of wish I wouldn't put out there or whatever. But I feel pretty good about this one. So let us count this the first of the night hiking diaries, the diaries of an apophatic big dog. I like to think of myself as one of them, an apophatic big dog. If nothing else, I'm a student of them. Apophatic pup, I don't know, you know. It's my life. That's the way I meditate. That's the way I pray. That's the way I live my life. I devote myself to it. There's a reason this shadow isn't. I don't spend time in the gym as much as I should. I don't socialize as much as I should. I'm a skinny vagrant in a way. I don't entirely know what that word means. You know, just a sick Victorian child in some sense. You know, you get what I'm saying. I'm nothing impressive. So the contemplative life has meant a lot to me. And I don't think it's complete when you're just spending all your time alone. That's probably why I haven't had all this time to record. I've spent it a lot of times alone, but I've also spent a lot of time being busy, doing other things, especially with this as like home base for my personality, for my prayer life, for my relationship with God. The walk, the hike, the night hike. With that, it is time for me to walk the rest of the way home. Good night. God bless you. Peace out, homie slice.